Our next speaker, international perspective on liberty, governance, and policy, public policy, Douglas Carswell, who would like to be the Prime Minister, served in the British Parliament. He was involved in Brexit before moving to the United States. He's relocated to the great state of Mississippi. I'll let him explain why he chose there. He's been featured in PragerU videos. He now leads the Mississippi Center for Public Policy, a free market think tank advocating for lower taxes, fewer regulations, and expanded economic opportunity. His experience on both sides of the Atlantic gives him a unique vantage point on how the ideas of freedom and government shape nations and what policies he has found in his state for the rest of us. Please welcome the Honorable Douglas Carswell.
Diane, thank you so much for organizing today, and thanks to all of you for inviting me to take part in the Palmetto Panel. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you. I'm Douglas Carswell, and I run the Mississippi Center for Public Policy, and you're probably thinking that is the weirdest Mississippi accent you've ever heard. That's because I'm originally from England. Before making my home in Mississippi, I was a member of the British Parliament for 12 years. I was elected to the House of Commons 4 times, and I went into politics in Britain today to do what we today call Brexit. I wanted Britain to leave the European Union, and I co-founded Vote Leave, the official Brexit campaign. And having helped to make that happen, I then left the House of Commons, quit Parliament, and moved to Mississippi. I can hear you thinking, moved to Mississippi? Really? Was Florida full? Was Texas already taken? Let me explain. I moved to America because I believe that freedom, as Reagan said, is what's lifted our species from the swamp to the stars. And if you believe that, there is no country on earth that compares to the United States. Now, I wanted to work for a state-based think tank because I can't help noticing that all the great ideas in American politics come from the states. Think about it: Wisconsin welfare reform, school choice from West Virginia and Arizona, certificate of need repeal from South Carolina. Finally, I wanted to be somewhere, how can I put this delicately, properly Southern, because that's the best bit of America, let's be honest, isn't it? Yeah? It's wonderful to live in a place where folk say, where do you go to church? Not, do you go to church? Or like in London, you go where? I find it a real privilege to live in a society where it's impossible to fill up with gas or buy groceries without falling into a conversation with a complete stranger. And isn't it just wonderful and civilized being in the South? Everyone in the South is so polite. Now, when I first moved to Mississippi, I thought, bless your heart, was the sweetest thing anyone could say. It took me a while to figure that out. But look, it's a privilege to live in a part of the world where people eat grits, where they drink sweet tea, and where they enjoy Friday night lights. Now, when I first moved to Mississippi to run the Mississippi Center for Public Policy, some friends who ran think tanks in other states shared an old American saying with me, thank God for Mississippi. And they explained in good faith and in good humor, I think, that as long as Mississippi was in the data, there was no chance that their state would finish last. I couldn't see the joke there. But today, it's changing. That really is changing. Mississippi is starting to implement really important free market reforms. I just want to share some of those with you. Mississippi has implemented a phonics reading revolution in the classroom. A decade ago, Mississippi 4th graders were ranked 49th out of 50 in America. Today, Mississippi 4th graders are ranked 9th out of 50 in America. Mississippi fourth graders read better than fourth grade kids in California, New York, and Minnesota. And it's not just that Mississippi fourth graders now read better than kids in those states. Last year, Minnesota spent $18,000 per student. California spent over $20,000 per student, and New York spent a whopping $29,000 per student. Mississippi fourth graders beat them all on a mere $12,200. Now, for years, some have wanted us to just keep on writing out the big checks for education, and I get that. But Mississippi proves that education is about more than just money. It's about teaching standards. It's about the culture in the classroom. Now, given some of the things that some of the leaders in New York and Minnesota say, I wonder if perhaps fourth graders in Mississippi perform better than some of the adults in those states, but that's another story. In 2021, Mississippi deregulated the labor market. We're already an at-will employment state, but in 2021, we passed legislation for what's known as occupational licensing reform. That's a fancy way of saying we got rid of a whole bunch of red tape that stops people from finding the jobs that they want to take. Mississippi has implemented tort reform, making our state a much more sane and stable place for companies to do business. Mississippi has kept energy costs low, and a lot of that, frankly, was just by saying no to a lot of the Biden-era administration's inducements to sign up for renewables. And as a result, we've got cheap, reliable energy. In 2024, we implemented school funding reform, and we implemented a system so that every child in the state system in Mississippi has a personalized budget. And we're not quite there yet, but the aim is that they should be able to take their personalized education budget to any school of their choice. Now, the first really big fight I had in Jackson, Mississippi was in 2022 over tax reform. We implemented a reform to make the income tax a flat 4%. And a flat income tax is step number one towards eventual income tax elimination. And I'm delighted to tell you that last year, we passed a bill that will eliminate Mississippi's income tax entirely. We became the first state since Ulrich, Alaska, to pass that legislation in a generation. So I'm really pleased that we're the first state to pass legislation to eliminate the income tax. Now, take all these reforms together, and they are a really potent policy mix. Any one of them on their own is no big deal. Bunch them together, and it really is a potent policy mix. So much so that actually in the past 5 years, Mississippi has had more economic growth than in the previous 15 years combined. In 2024, household incomes in Mississippi grew by 6% in real terms, the second fastest growth rate in America. Mississippi has seen a flood of inward investment. Free market reforms mean that people across America are talking about Mississippi not because we're last, but because we're starting to lead. Now, as a new arrival to Mississippi, I bought into Mississippi. I hope you can sense that. I've really bought into Mississippi. Having moved my family 4,000 miles across the Atlantic to be in Mississippi, nothing annoys me more than outdated ideas about the state of our state. Now, when people think of Mississippi, let's be honest, sometimes they think of a river. Sometimes they think of a steamboat, a paddle steamer, or a cotton field, or some old guy strumming a broken banjo on a broken, dilapidated porch. Yeah? They think of a state that is 50th out of 50. Or they think of those Hollywood movies that have done down our state with dripping condescension for so long. That image of our state is out of date. It's wrong. Mississippi today is more about AI and additive manufacturing. Now, 2 years ago, Mississippi's per capita GDP is the gold standard of measuring economic success. Mississippi's per capita GDP 2 years ago overtook that of the United Kingdom for the first time ever. And the fact I'm most pleased about, Schadenfreude, is that in 2025, Mississippi's per capita GDP overtook that of Germany. Yeah. Obviously, this matters a great deal to us in Mississippi. We're very proud of it. But why should it matter elsewhere? Why should it matter in South Carolina? What relevance does this have to South Carolina? Well, three things. Firstly, it shows that if free market reforms can elevate Mississippi, the poorest state in America, they can work anywhere. Secondly, it proves that smart public policy, led by organizations like the South Carolina Policy Council, like initiatives like this one, that is how to make the change at the state level. It's the key to achieving success. Thirdly, what we've done in Mississippi illustrates that notionally conservative Republicans can actually be made to do some actual conservative policy. When you're willing to be bold and go against the status quo in a state often addicted to the status quo, you can win big if you try. Now, having advocated for free market reforms on either side of the Atlantic, let me share a little secret with you. Please don't repeat it outside this room. Sometimes conservatives elected to office don't actually do conservative things when they get into office. It's true, it's true, it's true. That's certainly the way in Mississippi. Maybe it's the case here too. You know, it's certainly the way things have been back in Britain. Elected to Parliament as a member of the British Conservative Party, I left the British Conservative Party and I joined Nigel Farage's party. I called a special election against myself when I did that, to give voters a chance to decide if they approved or disapproved of my decision. Why did I do that? Why did I leave the Conservative Party and join Nigel Farage's party? Because the party that I used to be part of, the Conservative Party in Britain, frankly had more in common with the progressive, radical, lunatic left on things like climate change, immigration, taxation, than the people that I was elected to represent. Now, looking back at what's now unfolding in Britain as a consequence of that is so sad. It really is catastrophically sad. Britain might have left the European Union, but Britain still has the European disease of high tax, high regulation, and restrictions on what you can say. Rather than take advantage of the Brexit opportunities, Britain has done the opposite. The country of Adam Smith, of David Ricardo, of Margaret Thatcher, now has the highest tax burden in 50 years. The government of Britain consumes almost 50% of GDP and micromanages people's lives. The failure of conservatives in office to deliver conservative outcomes in Britain explains why the country has lurched so radically to the left. It's why more people were arrested in Britain last year for what they posted online than in the whole of communist China. Now think about that. More people were arrested in Britain for what they said on the internet than in China. It's why Britain has an administrative state that tries to control everything apart from the country's borders. That's the price you pay for having conservatives come to office but end up governing like Nancy Pelosi. Don't make that mistake here. Now, the mad officials and left-wing judges that really run Britain seem to be encouraging everyone to leave the country, apart from the people who are not actually meant to be there in the first place because they've come in illegally. Disgracefully, Britain now has a prime minister that would not back America against Iran the other week. What do you imagine Margaret Thatcher or Winston Churchill would make of that? You know, there's not a day that goes by when I haven't woken up in America and felt how incredibly lucky I am to be here. So thank you. Thank you for having me. I think gratitude is the key to a happy life, and I think immigrants like me should never tire of saying thank you. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for having my family. You know, when I first moved to America, I came with my wife, Clementine, and my daughter, and it was a big move for all of us. It really was a huge upheaval. My daughter's first day at her new school was, we were all a bit nervous, and she had to say the Pledge of Allegiance, and being new to your country, she didn't know the words. We made sure she knew the words on her second day. I believe every school child in America shouldn't just say the Pledge of Allegiance. They should know about this country's extraordinary story. After breaking away from Britain, the founders gathered in that courthouse in Philadelphia, and they created the most extraordinary system of self-government ever created. as America marks this year 250 years of independence. I suspect that even if George III could magically come back for the festivities, he would have to admit it's been a phenomenal success. Yeah? The founders created a system that transformed 13 ramshackle colonies into the greatest republic in human history. America works not because the laws of physics are different in North America, not because of the geography of North America. America works because the founders injected into the DNA of the young republic freedom and liberty. They created a system that allowed different states to do things differently, to try different solutions to the same problems side by side. The genius of the American system is that system's competition, and Mississippi's success today is a vindication that the American model still works. It's precisely because the American model works that each of us in this room has a much bigger mission than just trying to figure out the right policies for our state for this year and for next year. We have an even bigger fight on our hands than simply trying to implement tort reform or tax cuts. We must aim to ensure that young Americans grow up understanding and appreciating the American model. And that's why in Mississippi we invest so much in hearts and minds, reaching the hearts and minds of the next generation. We have a leadership academy that teaches young Mississippians about the morality of the free market and about the American founding. We have an illustrated children's book, What Makes America Special, which aims to teach 7 to 10-year-olds about American exceptionalism. Actually, the book is modeled exactly on those lessons that I taught my young daughter about her new home when we moved here. I've partnered with PragerU to make videos about patriotism, or what you call patriotism. Look, an immigrant who brought his family to America, I want every young American to grow up believing in America the way my young daughter does. Look, I may not have entirely mastered your language yet. I may still say water when I mean water. I may still take the lift when I mean use the elevator. I may still try to put my rubbish in the bin when I should be putting my trash in the trash can. And goodness knows I've driven on the wrong side of the road often enough. But I know enough about your country to know that each of us in this room is the beneficiary of the most sublime inheritance on this earth. Don't mess it up. Don't mess it up. God bless you, God bless America, and thank you for passing these values on to the next generation. Thank you.